Welcome to Beneath the Bible, where we're helping you dig deeper and uncover the world beneath the sacred book. With Easter just around the corner, today we're going to look at the origins of our English word Easter, where it comes from and where it doesn't come from. Now, maybe you've seen something like this going around on social media. The word Easter is derived from the word Ishtar. Ishtar was a Mesopotamian goddess of fertility. Eggs and bunnies, both symbols of fertility, are her symbols. When Constantine Christianized the Roman Empire, he syncretized the faith and introduced pagan elements into Christianity, including the springtime fertility celebration of Ishtar. Now, often there are pictures like this one that go with it to emphasize Ishtar's fertility qualities. The idea is that Easter is just a pagan celebration honoring fertility. Alternatively, you might see people talking about how Easter is just a copy of a German pagan festival to Eostre, a goddess of springtime. Now, maybe you've seen things like this. Maybe you've wondered if they're true. Well, today we're going to have a Near Eastern archaeologist address these very questions. Let's dig in.
Let's start with the connection between Easter and a Germanic goddess named Eostre. Basically, nothing about this one is true. Let's break down some of the claims and see why they don't hold up. On the surface, there is some linguistic validity to this connection between the words Easter and Eostre. The English term Easter may have its roots in an Old Germanic or Old English term for spring or rising sun. The goddess Eostre, however, is only actually tested in one source, the Venerable Bede, the early English historian, who wrote this about her. And this is what it is in the modern English. He just says that prior to the Christianization of England, the month of April used to be called Eostre month, and it was named after a goddess Eostre who had feasts during that month. By Bede's time, it was called Paschal month, indicating that it was the month when Easter, the resurrection of Jesus, was celebrated. Now, scholars are split on whether or not we should accept what Bede says here. Just because something is cited in only one single source doesn't mean it isn't trustworthy, and Bede is, well, venerable, so he has a trustworthy reputation. From this single reference, some scholars have constructed a whole etymology of Eostre, going from Bede all the way back to Proto-Indo-European, linking her with the dawn in the east. But, and this is a big but, it's not actually clear if a goddess named Eostre was actually worshipped by pre-Christian Germanic peoples. This reference in Bede is the only textual reference to her, and we don't have archaeological evidence for her existence. No statues, no other sources, nothing to attest to Eostre except Bede's comment here. Some have tried to link a series of Roman-era shrines to Eostre, or more specifically to a Germanic antecedent of Eostre, generally called Matronae. These altars are from a very specific region and linked with a particular tribal group. Some of these altars are dedicated to Matronae Austriahenae, with Austriahenae being linked with Eostre via various linguistic and etymological gymnastics. But we don't know what Austriahenae is meant to be. It could be a place, a clan, tribe, ancestor. It could be a lot of things. It's a pretty tenuous connection. The term Easter at least seems to derive from Old English and Old Germanic terms for spring, but we should also know in most parts of the world, Easter is not the term for the holiday. Many places call the holiday some variation of Pascha, the Greek term which comes from the Hebrew word Pesach or Passover. Other names include Resurrection Sunday or Resurrection Day. Easter is a term that belongs to the Anglosphere and German-speaking world. So hopefully that should put to rest any connection between the word Easter and a goddess named Eostre. But the question remains, is Easter connected with Ishtar? No, it's not. You see, we actually know a fair amount about Ishtar. This is Ishtar. This is not Ishtar. Now, this is either an underworld goddess, or maybe Ishtar's sister, or the demon Liltu or Lilith, but it's not Ishtar. Ishtar was associated with the Sumerian goddess Inanna, and there's a lot we could discuss about the origins of this goddess, where she came from, and how her worship spread, but we'll save that for another time. We will say that over time, as Akkadian became the dominant language of the region and Sumerian died off, the goddess called Ishtar became very popular and the most significant goddess in the Mesopotamian pantheon. In fact, many local goddess cults were subsumed and syncretized into the identity of Ishtar. She became one of the great gods who could manifest in multiple local aspects. In fact, the term Ishtar Atu, the plural of Ishtar, became a kind of byword for goddesses. In the ancient world, particularly in Mesopotamia, deities had a constellation of traits, objects, beings, places, and materials that were associated with them. We have a whole video if you want to learn more about this at a theoretical level, but For now, we just want to talk about the constellation of Ishtar. This goddess had a number of primary aspects. She was associated with extramarital sex, not motherhood or marriage or fertility, just the deed itself. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the demigod hero Gilgamesh recognizes the sort of treacherous nature of Ishtar and spurns her advances. She was also associated with war. The battlefield was called Ishtar's playground. She's often depicted as a power-hungry warrior. Even the story of Inanna's descent into the underworld is really ultimately about her striving for power. And when she is depicted, she often has multiple weapons and a horned helmet. She often has wings. She sometimes emanates rays of light off of her. She's linked with the lion. She's linked with lapis lazuli and the planet Venus. Notably, Ishtar is not linked with eggs or rabbits. There's nothing in ancient iconography that links Ishtar with any of the traditional Christian Easter imagery or activities. The only connection you could make between Ishtar and Easter is the story of Inanna's descent into the underworld. Now, there are two versions of this story, one Sumerian and the other Akkadian. In both versions, Inanna Ishtar goes to visit her sister Eresh-ki-gal in the underworld. She goes through the 7 gates of underworld and finally stands before her sister, and Ishtar is killed. Here, the two versions differ in the details, but in general, the great gods send emissaries to bring Ishtar's body back and revive it. In the Akkadian version, this is because humans are no longer reproducing because Ishtar's influence is gone. In the Sumerian version, Ishtar must find a substitute to replace her in the underworld. She saves her servant, her hairstylist, and her mourner from the demons who are looking for a suitable replacement, but she lets them take her husband, Dumuzi. Gilgamesh was right not to get involved with that lady. So this story with themes of death, rebirth, and substitution would be the best connection between Ishtar and Eostre, but no one's making these connections, and they shouldn't. The stories are unrelated, but it just shows the laziness of the meme. You could make a much more compelling connection between Ishtar and the Easter holiday, but no. Ishtar and Eostre kind of sound alike, so people think one must come from the other. That's kind of the extent of the logic, but there's no evidence to support it.
So, if there's one conclusion that we want to draw today, it's this. Don't trust memes to teach you about ancient history. Now, we love a good meme as much as the next person, and they're all fun and games, but they aren't serious scholarship. But you knew that, right? Well, in all seriousness, I think these specious connections between Easter, Ishtar, and Eostre do serve to demonstrate the importance of critical scholarship in evaluating our knowledge of the ancient world. Connecting Easter with Eostre seems to make sense on the surface, and in fact there does seem to be a linguistic connection between the two words. When you dig a little deeper, however, you find good reason to doubt the bigger claim drawn from this connection, the existence of a Germanic goddess whose veneration was co-opted into Christian Easter traditions. Now, it's not like this sort of thing couldn't happen, but there's very little evidence to back up this sizable claim. Now, the connection between Easter and Ishtar is the same way. It seems plausible enough on the surface, but it doesn't hold up under scrutiny. And we know a lot about Ishtar and her predecessor, Inanna, and none of it can conclusively tie her to the origins of Easter. The closest connection could be with Ishtar's death and rebirth, but this isn't cited when people connect Easter with Ishtar, and there are plenty of other similar stories from the ancient world that share those themes. Now, that's not to say that we think the story of Jesus' resurrection is just another ancient death and rebirth story with no actual truth or historicity. Quite the opposite. We believe that the death and resurrection of Jesus is an event within history and that transcends history. We believe it's the single most important event that has ever happened in the history of the world. Now, of course, that requires more explanation than we have time for here, but we'll tie it to today's topic with this. We think that all of these ancient stories of death and rebirth, this desire in so many people around the world to celebrate new life, especially as the dead of winter gives way to the rebirth of spring, points to a recognition within each of us of the tragedy of death and a desire within each of us to see death defeated once and for all. We believe God has placed that desire in the human heart, and if God has placed it there, then God must also hold the fulfillment of that desire. We believe that the resurrection of Jesus is that fulfillment, where death is defeated and the way to new eternal life with God is opened for all people. We celebrate the hope we have in the risen Jesus this Easter and all year round, and we pray you would know that hope for yourself. Happy Easter, and may the resurrection life of Jesus give you life today. Thanks for joining us for this Beneath the Bible video. If you want to learn more about this topic, be sure to check out our references and resources down in the description below. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more content like it, be sure to subscribe and check out our videos on Lilith and our video on the idea of the divine constellation in the ancient world. Now, finally, if you want to support the work that we're doing, you can become one of our Beneath the Bible excavators through channel membership at the Join button below. For $5 a month, you'll get early access to each video we publish, and you'll get to be part of a monthly video call with us. If you learned something new today, take a minute to share this video with your friends. And until next time, keep digging.